Welcome in, everyone, and thank you for listening to the 256th ever episode of the Missouri Sports Podcast, brought to you by 106 Apparel and recording from the MSP studio in beautiful Springfield, Missouri. I'm one of your hosts, Cameron Albert, alongside my good friend and fellow Mizzou fan, Kyle DeVries. How you doing today, Kyle?
I'm doing great, Cameron. It's an honor to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Oh, yeah. Our guest this week, Kyle DeVries, podcast host.
You're about to ask me how are you doing again, weren't you?
Yeah. How you doing today, Kyle? We could get in just like a loop where I accidentally just go right back into.
We almost did.
Yeah. Producer Cameron just reminded us football starts tomorrow.
Hall of Fame game?
I guess so.
Mm-hmm. Not Mizzou football.
Not college football, the superior football.
It's fine.
No, NFL football starts tomorrow. Who plays in the Hall of Fame game?
Jets and Browns.
I got a lot of Jets on my fantasy team.
A couple of prestigious franchises there.
It's true. Do they actually play the starters in the Hall of Fame game?
Usually not, unless you're Josh Jacobs last year.
All right. Well, probably won't tune into that. But it is football month for Mizzou football.
Yeah.
We've got game one, end of this
here.
month. Very soon. Very quickly approaching.
It almost doesn't feel real
No.
that it's this close.
No, and especially, I mean, like you in particular have a lot going on between now and then. And so you're finishing up school. You've got a baby that's going to arrive anytime now. So
But most importantly,
yeah,
Mizzou football's coming up.
Yeah, most importantly, we've got to like tell you all about the team and like make predictions and try to figure out how the season's going to go beforehand.
Yes, I don't know what we're going to do schedule-wise in the second half of August, but we'll figure it out.
Yeah, I mean, we had a baby in September.
Made it work.
Yeah, so no big deal.
Priorities.
Exactly. So what are we going to talk about this week? We're going to talk about the start of fall camp. We have a little bit of basketball recruiting news. Coach Drinkwitz, we're at a press conference. And the main thing we're going to do is a little recap of last football season, just to try to remember what happened and sort of what the storylines were and how we should be thinking about this upcoming season after reflecting on the results from last year. Before we do any of that, of course, don't forget to subscribe on YouTube. Subscriber numbers been going up lately. We appreciate that. Last week's video had a bunch of views, a bunch of comments. The comment section was popping off. Apparently, Missouri's going to get kicked out of the SEC, is what they're saying. And also,
Comments are wilding.
Yeah, the floor for this team is 8 wins, I heard. So just great news all around in the comment section.
Yeah, tell us how good or bad our takes are, anything. Just we like to hear from you.
Truly. It was exciting last week seeing all those comments roll in. So keep subscribing. We appreciate that. Leave us a review wherever you listen to us. And of course, you can support us on Patreon, patreon.com/Missouri Sports Pod.
Didn't we miss something last week, maybe?
Did we miss something last week?
Yeah, we've been doing this a while, haven't we?
Oh, yes. I was going to miss it again.
I had no idea what you're talking about.
We've been doing this podcast for 5 years now. Is that right?
Well, that's what you said before. Otherwise, I wouldn't have brought it up.
Is that the actual number?
I believe we have.
Yeah, we
started audio only, and then
that is insane.
Maybe like a year in, we started doing YouTube.
5 years. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Wow.
Whatever you do, don't go back and listen to the old episodes.
We got to put that behind a paywall soon.
Sure.
Yeah. But yeah, 5 years. That's insane. We've changed locations multiple times now. Actually, this episode might look a little different because we've got some more lighting. We're trying some new stuff there. We're trying to...
It's a work in progress.
Always keep improving. So we appreciate everyone that's stuck with us this whole time. Any new listeners? Of course, this is the time of year where I always remind everyone, when you have those relatives that inevitably are asking you about Mizzou football 2 months from now, when they start 3-0, 4-0, now's the time to tell them to start watching or listening to our podcast so they can know what to pay attention to, what's going on.
It's going to make the season so much better whenever you know all the storylines, know all the players going in.
Yeah. And we all have those relatives that are like tangentially aware of Mizzou sports.
Only when they lose.
Yeah, mostly. And they're going to want to come talk to you and be like, so what's going on with this Mizzou football here? And you'd be like, just start now listening to the podcast. You won't have to answer those questions.
Speaking of the podcast, Cameron, you had a kind of a cool thing happen this week. The podcast in general did, but you individually had your voice show up on a Mizzou hype video. The actual like Mizzou football account put out.
Yeah.
Had like hundreds of thousands of views.
Yeah.
And your voice was just radiating
from the
video.
That Twitter video got shared all over the place. You found it first organically.
Yeah, I was just watching organically, and I was like, it's literally like a 2-second clip of you talking. And I was like, hold on a second. Like, I'm pretty sure that was Cameron, but I had to listen to it like 3 times just to make sure.
Producer Cameron, do you have that queued up for us?
Oh, yeah.
One thing's for sure, this team is not lacking leadership.
18 returning starters.
We have over 32 players who have started 4 or more games in their college careers.
They're putting it all on the line with something to prove.
Something to prove.
Pretty cool.
I'm right there with somebody and Coach Drink. Yeah.
Give me goosebumps.
18 returning starters. Can you give me just 18 returning starters? 18 returning starters. Wow. They pulled that.
It's an honor.
They pulled that out of episode from 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And still waiting for like my royalty check from all the. It was used on a link to buy tickets. Ooh. And I'm pretty sure when people hear 18 returning starters, they're going to be buying tickets.
I mean, yeah.
So
that's what got me hooked.
at least they could do is, I don't know, send us a bobblehead or something.
Well,
somebody out there is listening, though. How else? Somebody is listening, and
welcome in.
Yeah. So that's pretty cool. Now what? Where do we go from here, Kyle? We need to talk about the news. Let's start with basketball. Get that out of the way. This time of year, I know people aren't very patient with basketball news, but we've got some hoop heads out there that I want to let them know a couple prospects that might be Missouri Tigers in the future. And the first one of those is Trent Burns. He's a 7'2" center, class of 2024. He is visiting Missouri on September 1st. So keep his name in mind. And then another name that you may have heard of before, Peyton Marshall, 6'10", 300-pound post player, originally from St. Louis, now lives in Georgia. He was originally committed to Auburn, decommitted when one of their assistant coaches left for Ole Miss. So he is considered, Ole Miss is considered the favorite for him, old Christopher Beard and company. But Missouri.
Which is where John Bull just went, by the way.
Right. John Bull to Ole Miss. So maybe that center spot is no longer available for them.
Might be onto something.
So, but he is going to decide where he's going to play college ball on August 11th. So right around the corner. And that could impact the other guy I mentioned, Trent Burns, since same position.
Did you mention that guy's measurables by chance?
Marshall?
Yeah.
Yeah, 6'10", 300 pounds.
It's a big fellow.
Yeah.
That'd be pretty cool.
Yeah. He's not going to get moved off the block very easily.
No.
So he's committing somewhere August 11th. It sounds like Mizzou has a serious chance here, especially with John Bull strangely going to Ole Miss and Marshall originally being from St. Louis. So a couple of hoops, big men to watch out for. I think Marshall might end up. I think Power Mizzou gave a
future
prediction for Mizzou. Yep, for Marshall. So seems promising there. Yeah. Now that is all for basketball for right now. We'll get into football, starting with the start of fall camp, which is always an exciting time. Coach Drinkwitz had a start of camp press conference where he answered some questions. He gave one injury update that was kind of unintentionally amusing, the way he revealed this information. He said Isaac Thompson has a knee lower body injury. He started to say knee injury, switched it to lower body injury. He'll be out for camp, and they will reassess at some point and figure out what's going on there. We'll get more details, but He started to say knee, so that's not a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, you don't like to hear that, especially with Isaac Thompson struggled with, I think he tore his ACL in high school. Was that his senior year that he tore his ACL, I think? So obviously, I don't think he is in line to start this season, but clearly a guy who's fighting for those backup reps. And so when he's missing fall camp, that's pretty integral practice reps that he's not going to be able to be a part of, but it'll be all right.
And just in general, kind of a rough start to his Mizzou career with him being a 4-star in-state guy. Was one of the players that was really boosting Missouri's recruiting class numbers for his class. So hopefully he gets healthy and we'll see him on the field as an upperclassman.
Yep, just a redshirt freshman still.
Good news, though, for him specifically, is the NCAA will now offer post-eligibility injury insurance for athletes. So somebody else is listening to the podcast because
the U.S. government is listening.
The NCAA, we were kind of trashing both of them a couple weeks ago, but apparently they were listening and they were like, yeah, you know what? Healthcare for student athletes, it's actually a good idea.
That's a good idea.
Other than that, for Drink's press conference, he went through all the different position groups, kind of gave an update on where things stand with some of those. Nothing too earth-shattering there. And because we are going to do the offense preview next week, defense preview after that, it would be just rehashing things if we dove too deep into his press conference remarks on the position groups. We'll get to that in the following weeks. It's the one thing that everybody's talking about with this press conference, and you heard it on the little clip from the tweet, the something to prove mindset. And as much as it's kind of being over discussed at this point, I think it's a good message and a good sort of rallying motto for camp and for this season overall.
Yeah, I mean, something that is so overdone, honestly, at this point is just proving like the haters wrong. Like, which I mean, I totally understand how that can be, used as motivation for athletes and stuff. But I thought it was cool how they kind of twisted it a little bit to something, a way to prove the people that supported us that they were right. Mm-hmm. The fans, the stakeholders, the families of the players, everybody who is in the background supporting the students all the way, 365 days a year. Mm-hmm. We're going to prove those people right for the investment of time or maybe even money they've made. And I think that was just like, wow, I've never really thought about it that way. So I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, so those of us that are optimistic about Mizzou this year, we should be proven right, hopefully. So now the meat of this episode, we're going to do a little recap of last year's season.
Let me ask you real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
Give me a scale 1 to 10. How exhausted are you with the Nwaneri debacle?
Well, honestly, because it's trending positive for Mizzou, obviously anything can change, but it seems like his recruitment's going to get wrapped up in the next 2 to 3 weeks.
I think August 14th seems to maybe be the most solidified date we have for a commitment date right now.
And there was a Rivals article with somebody who has a future cast for him to Mizzou that was saying he doesn't have any reason to change that prediction right now.
Yeah, got a couple future casts, a couple more, and since we've recorded last, so a few more even kind of national analysts that seem to be favoring Mizzou a little bit, which honestly, like in the past when Missouri's been in on some of these big 5-star recruits, like even Luther Burden, I felt like Missouri's camp felt positive about Luther Burden for months and months, even before, when he was still committed to Oklahoma.
Yeah.
And, and it took the national media so much longer to realize like, okay, this is legit and Missouri has an actual shot here. But that honestly doesn't really seem to be the case here. I think Missouri's getting the respect for Nwaneri, and that seems to bode well.
It is very delicious seeing the Oklahoma fans
just melting down,
freaking out at the prospect of not landing him, since it has seemed like such a sure thing for them.
Yeah. And I definitely don't think it's over by any stretch. I don't want to guarantee anything, but I still think, Missouri's in a good spot.
Yeah. I mean, other than him having already committed to Missouri, I can't really picture a better situation than where we're at right now.
Yeah, but kind of trying to gather as much information as I possibly can, really, from both sides, both Missouri's camp and Oklahoma. Anything that's out there, it really sounds like they're the family they're ready to wrap it up.
Yeah,
and Missouri has made apparently a very attractive NIL offer, and they've demonstrated that with Luther Burden, how that looks, how that's tangibly working, and I think they've put themselves in a great position.
Yeah, I think Will Wade would approve of the offer.
Yeah, I bet you're right.
Yeah, I mean, Nwaneri to Mizzou, it's happening.
I like the sound of that.
Yeah, 2 5-stars in one class, Nwaneri and Wingo. It's nice. It's nice to think about. Yeah, especially, I mean, we talked about it before, but with the way the recruiting class started to come full circle and wrap it up like that would be Coach Drinkwit's best performance yet.
Encore.
Yeah. I want to see it on the field. Did we see it last year? We saw sparks of it. We saw tastes of it.
Yeah.
We saw a little bit of what could be.
Yeah. I mean, I think, maybe we can kind of just go right into kind of recapping last year. But, we talked about Luther Burden last year and our expectations for him. And, I think we were trying to stay modest as much as we could just because he is a true freshman. And it's so difficult to step right into the SEC as an 18-year-old kid and just be everything that people think that you should be, and especially in a situation where Missouri doesn't land very many 5-star players in football. So, I think Luther Burden, though, was an excellent example of recruiting prowess and recruiting pedigree and what that looks like even for a true freshman. And, I was watching some highlights of the first game of the season last year, Louisiana Tech, and they were already just placing so much responsibility on Luther Burden, and he scored at least 2 different touchdowns in that game, and he was running from the Wildcat, and he was just doing all facets of the game in his first career game. And while maybe he might not have lived up to some expectations statistics-wise that some people might have had, I think he was everything that we could have hoped for.
Yeah, I mean, I was trying to set realistic expectations with myself, and considering that he was a true freshman, and he surpassed those expectations by quite a bit. And next week, when we really dig into the offense, and we talk about the wide receiver room specifically, I'll try again with some more predictions of how I think it could go this year. It's a little bit easier now that he has established like a baseline. It'll be a little bit easier to predict, I think, but they're gonna make every effort to get him the ball as much as possible.
Yep.
So looking at last year, Louisiana Tech game, Luther Burden, welcome to Mizzou, and he had like 5 broken tackles on that one sideline touchdown.
Yeah,
that was like a play that probably should have been a tackle for like -2 yards, turned into like an 8-yard touchdown.
Yeah,
with 3 broken tackles.
Yeah, that was just a ridiculous play.
In that game, I was watching the highlights back. I watched quite a bit of that one. It seemed like the offense did have a little like first game jitters, maybe. Brady Cook didn't look super electric or anything close to that, really. There was one pass in particular that I noticed early on where it was kind of like floated to Luther Burden on the sideline.
Yes, very dangerous.
It was a completion in this game against Louisiana Tech, but there's maybe only 3 games last year where that is a completion, and I think the rest of them, it's a pick 6. So we immediately saw in that first game sort of what weapons are out there, Dominic Lovett, Luther Burden, but we saw Brady Cook be inconsistent. Of course, they ended up, winning fairly easily against Louisiana Tech.
Defense helped them out a lot, though. Defense had at least, I think they had 2 defensive scores in that game.
And that'll be the story of the whole season.
Yeah, and even the defense looked like they kind of weren't ready to go right off the bat, too, in that game. They gave up a long, like 60, 70-yard touchdown pass, just a slant right up the middle.
Yeah.
And,
those big chunk passing plays where a problem
for sure. So, yeah, it took everybody a little bit of time to get it dialed in, but defense definitely figured it out.
Mm-hmm. So then immediately week 2, Missouri just gets destroyed by Kansas State. I did think it was worth mentioning something that I forgot about by the time the season ended, but the Kansas State game was only Brady Cook's 3rd career start. And so he had to go on the road in bad weather conditions to Kansas State where it was insanely loud all game. There was a weird weather delay.
Mm-hmm. Kansas State ended up being a really, really good team. They were like a top 10, 15 team last year in the country.
And
he injured his shoulder.
Yeah. And Cook never got anything going in that game. And what's his name? Taylor Martinez destroyed us.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Adrian Martinez. Both former Nebraska quarterbacks.
Yes.
Adrian Martinez destroyed Missouri.
I mean, mainly I felt like Kansas State defense.
Yeah.
And that was probably one of the worst football games I've ever watched.
Yeah, it was pretty terrible.
Legitimately.
Yeah, Kansas State's defense was in Missouri's backfield all game long.
Wasn't there a stretch where there was like 2 or 3 interceptions on consecutive passes? Like Brady Cook actually got pulled out of the game, and then Jack Abraham went in there and then threw 2 straight interceptions.
Yeah, Cook got injured, but he threw an interception right before coming out, and then yes, you're exactly right. I think Abraham had like 3 pass attempts for an incompletion and 2 interceptions.
Yeah.
And then I think maybe Cook came back out and threw another one.
Yeah, I think he might be right.
4 interceptions.
He definitely came back. Cook did. That was a nightmare.
Yeah. When I was watching some of the highlights back, I actually watched a good chunk of the full game that's on YouTube. There was a stretch where Missouri's defense forced 4 consecutive 3-and-outs in the second half.
You watched a good portion of the Kansas State game?
Well, see, I was going through the season,
okay,
and I saw on YouTube, I typed it in on YouTube, and then boom, there's the full game. I was like, oh, okay, cool. Let's check some of this out. If that had happened like later in the season, I wouldn't have bothered, but I was fresh on my, research.
God bless you. Thank you for your sacrifice.
4 consecutive 3-and-outs for Kansas State, or for Missouri's defense, forcing that against Kansas State. That resulted in a total of 3 points for Missouri. Missouri got the ball back 4 times after 3-and-outs, total of 3 points from the offense. That was that game, basically. Kansas State did put up 40, but the defense did their best for like most of that game, and then just couldn't hold on any longer.
I felt like that was, not to go out of order here, but I felt like that was just a theme of the season where the defense just surprised me at how many times they just held.
Yeah.
I'm like, I feel like that you see that happen in football where the defense is clearly the strength of the team and they play really well for a certain amount of the game. But at some point, it's like you just can't keep holding on every single time. You can't just get off the field every single time. And eventually they kind of just break down mentally and just kind of give up. Mm-hmm. And Missouri's defense just never really did that last year. They just kept playing their absolute hardest every single rep, every single down.
Yeah, I mean, watching the games, it was like, okay, the defense is they can't keep this up forever.
Yeah,
like the offense has to do something. But the defense in several games would be like, nope, we'll give you another chance. We'll give you another chance.
Yep. Nope, we did our job once again. And the offense let them down a lot.
Luckily, outside of the Tennessee game, we'll talk about later, even including the Tennessee game, the Kansas State game was the worst performance of the season.
Yep.
Got that out of the way week 2. And
that was a little bit scary, though. As the second week of the season, it was like, we're doing this.
Oh, yeah. It surprised people, I think, how bad Missouri looked in that game. And
it's just kind of deflating. You wait the whole offseason. You kind of talk up the team in your mind, and then it's
first real opponent.
Yep, first real opponent, former Big 12 foe, and then it's just the worst game you've ever watched. And it's like, wow, we waited all offseason for this.
Yeah, luckily, Missouri was able to bounce back from that game. They got to play Abilene Christian at home.
A little different team.
So, Missouri won that game 34-17. Abilene Christian didn't score they scored some garbage time points. It was not even that close. But what I'll always remember the Abilene Christian game for is Luther Burden's punt return touchdown.
Look at Luther Burden go!
And that call right there just really set the tone, got me hyped. That was, I have her name here somewhere, Courtney Lyle on SEC.
Luther Burden!
Yes, Luther Burden.
She was really excited.
I was excited. The crowd was excited. Incredible performance from Luther Burden in that one.
Yeah.
It was against Abilene Christian, though, so we'll move on from that. But Luther Burden.
Luther Burden!
There he is. So then we have the first SEC game of the year. That is against Auburn.
Was that really the first SEC game?
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh.
Yep. Right after Abilene Christian, we go at Auburn. And one thing that I wanted to point out from this game is this was the game where ESPN kept interrupting the broadcast to show us Aaron Judge maybe hit a home run. Do you remember that?
I totally forgot about that.
Yeah. So they would cut into the Mizzou game, and literally, I think like 2 times he struck out.
Because he was about to, he was about to hit some milestone home run.
Yes. And so
I saw that memed so much on Twitter, like because it was not just the Missouri game. It was like, because it took him a while to hit the home run.
Exactly. Yeah.
So
he was cutting into everything. Eventually, he hit a home run, and we could stop that. But Auburn game, we got to see a lot of Aaron Judge. Harrison Mevis missed a 26-yard field goal, and there was a little bit of like uneasiness there about him for a little while last year.
Yeah. I've never been so distraught that I almost physically vomit, but I about got there in this game because we needed a bounce back so badly from the absolute destruction that was the Kansas State game. Like, I wanted to beat Auburn's, they're a great program historically. Mm-hmm. That's not a team that you have a chance to beat on their field very often.
No.
And that was the year to do it because they were really bad. And Missouri's defense was playing well. They should have won the game. They had so many chances to win the game and didn't. They somehow escaped winning.
There's a video on YouTube that's just the last 4 minutes of the game, and it's one of the craziest things you'll ever see.
You couldn't make it up.
Yeah, the comments are it's just like nobody wanted to win this game. Like both teams had multiple chances to win. Mevis missed the field goal. There was Missouri intercepted Auburn, and it looked like that was going to clinch the deal. And then, of course, coming down to it, Nathaniel Pete just breaks through the line of scrimmage, and at a routine run play, looks like he's just going to score and win the game. He should have just taken we should have just had 1st and goal at the 1-yard line, but he tried to reach out for the touchdown, fumbled it out of the end zone for a touchback. And we had just forced Auburn to kick a field goal in overtime.
Yeah,
so
they would have won the game.
A touchdown wins the game, but a turnover also ends the game for a loss for Missouri.
There's just again, a common theme of this season is, and really every season, is the margin of error is so small. And we'll sit here before the season starts and we'll predict a certain amount of wins, and we'll have no idea how they get there or how they don't get there, but it doesn't matter because it's just how many wins did you have. Mm-hmm. And it's insane to think how close Missouri was to at least 2 more wins in this season if they just literally don't do the most insane thing ever. And so I think that's why it hurts so bad whenever you have a chance to beat Auburn on their own field. They don't do it. They need every win they're going to be able to get to 6 wins. Because you want to play in a bowl game every year. That should be the absolute baseline for pretty much every Missouri football season. And I think we knew it might be a little bit of a battle to get there. And so every SEC game is such a big deal, and it's games that you'll remember. Who knows when the next time we'll play at Auburn is? Yeah, could be 8 or 10 years. Mm-hmm. So I think that's just why it hurts so bad when you don't pull it out when you should.
Yeah, that was rough. It was rough. Missouri had a chance to bounce back, though, and hosted number 1 Georgia. And
did you say bounce back?
Yeah.
Okay. Bounce back with a loss, yeah.
They had a chance to bounce back.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. There was forget Auburn. This is a hyped game.
Yes.
Number 1 Georgia coming to our place.
Yeah, I thought the fans showed up too.
Yeah. Fluke nonsense in the Auburn game, so let's make it right here. And they basically did it. I mean,
once again, they basically won.
Brady Cook looked good against Georgia's defense. I mean, maybe if I want to nitpick a little bit, there was a couple throws that were off that maybe could have resulted in bigger plays, but
that's an NFL defense.
Yeah, and he was making plays. He looked good throwing the ball. Cody Schrader almost scored a touchdown. We were a less remembered moment from that game was
because it was still a positive thing.
Exactly. Missouri forcing a fumble, strip sack Stetson Bennett. Dalen Carnell recovers the fumble
with one person in between him and the end zone.
And he lets Stetson Bennett tackle him.
Yeah. That's definitely like the low key, like, what if thing. Well, because everybody remembers Cody Schrader's run where he got down to the 1 yard line. I'm not even going to say who it was, but we got a false start and then didn't end up scoring. So that was a missed opportunity, massive. But this one is like, a little more under the radar where Dalen Carnell just scoops the fumble with only Stetson Bennett, 40-year-old Stetson Bennett, in between him and the end zone, and he gets tackled.
And if you watch that play back, there's like 3 other Missouri defenders right next to him. And like, obviously completely ridiculous to think that this would actually happen. But as I'm rewatching it, I'm like,
just hold him up.
Give it to one of those guys. Give the ball to them. We need this touchdown so bad. Because, of course, there was a game where Missouri was settling for field goals nonstop. And it was absolutely a bounce-back game for Harrison Mevis. He had been a little shaky. And, I feel like it's a joke stereotype. I remember like the old NCAA football games making this joke where the video game where it's like kickers are a head case and, one bad kick can destroy them. And it's like the missed kick in the Auburn game, like that could mess somebody up. But
not Harrison Mevis.
No, he comes right back against Georgia, kicks a bunch of field goals. But it would have been nice if a couple of those, even one of those, was a touchdown.
If I could just literally rearrange some of those field goals, I'd probably add one more on the Auburn game. Maybe take a win there.
Yes.
No, Harrison Mevis, big bounce back. Honestly, even though they lost, bounce back for the team. Yeah. They literally almost beat probably one of the greatest college football teams that's ever existed.
Yeah, and hearing about it right now, we're hearing a bunch of preview stuff about Georgia and the SEC in general, and it's like, and people just keep saying Georgia was never really challenged outside of the Mizzou game and the college football playoff. Like, okay.
Yeah. And then they won the national championship game by like 17 touchdowns.
Exactly. So Missouri, second best team in the country.
Absolutely. That's how that works.
So at this point, Missouri,
I didn't realize this whole season was just this heartbreaking.
Well, it gets a little better.
A lot of heartbreak so far.
Missouri's only wins at this point in the season are against Louisiana Tech and Abilene Christian. 2 and 3 overall, heading to Florida. Things don't get much better there. The defense does their best, but Anthony Richardson.
He didn't even play that great of a game.
Not even a good game. Just made a couple plays when they absolutely had to have it. Like a 4th and 2 that he turned into a touchdown scramble. That like haunts me. And as far as Missouri's offense, Brady Cook threw 2 interceptions.
Bag-breaking one, in the red zone.
Yeah. So either again with the defense, they did everything they could.
Yep.
And just couldn't get anything going on offense in that game. And that was an opportunity too, because hey, we're going to have the same opportunity this year. Florida is not as good as they should be or have been in the past, but Florida was a disappointing team last year, and it would have been nice to capitalize on that. Similar to Auburn, you never know how often you're going to beat these teams. Missouri finally gets a win against Vanderbilt, but it was closer than we would have liked. 17-14 was the final score there. Just really ugly game. Good game for Luther Burden and the Missouri defense, basically. And even then, what's his name? Mike Wright kind of carved him up a little bit
They made
from
it
time
close
to time.
at the end, for sure. Man, it's crazy. I mean, when you're in the middle of the season, you have like hope and confidence in the team every single week, no matter what happens. At least that's how I am going. No matter what happened, I'm ready for the next week, and I'm excited for whatever comes next. But going back like this, like, man, I don't think we had a whole lot to be confident about, considering just like it's kind of crazy that they ended up getting to 6 wins, but just based on what we know about the team right now in the season.
Yeah, and going into a road matchup against, they were ranked 25th at the time, South Carolina.
Yeah.
Had some hype around them.
Turned the tide of the season.
Yeah. Missouri ends up getting the win and looked fantastic, finally. Final score was 23-10. Dominic Lovett, big games, 10 receptions, 148 yards. Winning on the road in the SEC, and the defense just had Spencer Rattler scrambling for his life the whole time, and that becomes a theme the rest of the season. Missouri's defense is in opponents' backfields constantly down the stretch. It was really fun to watch the defense play.
Yeah.
Rattler did have a scramble for a touchdown, but I mean, outperformed by Brady Cook in this game.
Yeah.
And Missouri's defense dominated.
Yeah, I think Brady Cook definitely improved a lot as the season went on, even with dealing with a shoulder injury, which he tore his labrum. So he was dealing with that the entire season. Mm-hmm. Kind of learned to just play through it. But I definitely think the two things that changed the season the most were probably the defensive line figuring it out, like you said, really learning to put the pressure on, and probably Brady Cook's ability to run the ball. Like, he really kind of unlocked that in his game, and I think that really changed things after this point.
Yeah, the South Carolina game, he had 11 rushes for 53 yards and a touchdown to go along with 224 passing yards. And this marks the point, starting with the South Carolina game, Brady Cook does not throw an interception the rest of the season. So all 7 of his interceptions came before the South Carolina game. And that takes us to the Kentucky game, which is now the 3rd game that probably should have been a win. Now, this one's a little trickier because Missouri was actually losing when the just the craziest play.
Mind-numbingly crazy.
The punt sails over the snap sails over the punter's head so badly that it's like nobody knows what to do.
Yeah.
And he actually gets the punt off, but it gets roughing the kicker.
Yeah, I mean, I watched the highlights of this one earlier today, and it was really a pretty boring game, honestly. It was ugly. Will Levis, really, honestly, Missouri corralled him. Mm-hmm. Like, they sacked him up many times.
Yeah, another dominant performance by the defensive line.
Yes, again, Missouri's defense was the only reason this game was close. But you're right. I think there was like 2 or 3 minutes left in the game. Kentucky had to punt inside of their own 20 or 30 yard line.
They are up 4.
They're up by 4 points.
Yeah,
but yeah, the snap goes over his head, but he barely got it off. And then if it wasn't for the penalty, Missouri would have had the ball in the red zone. Like, they would
20-yard line.
They would have been at the 20-yard line. It would have been. I don't know. In that game, I don't know if you can just pencil in a touchdown, but it would have been a pretty good chance.
The craziness of that play is that, like, there's a decent percentage of the time that punt play is a touchdown for Missouri. Yeah. Like, that ball was sailing to the end zone.
It was so lucky that the punter got to it first and was able to get it off. But they announced that they actually changed that rule, and
yes,
I don't really
exactly
know like the verbiage of the rule, but I guess is it not roughing the kicker if something happens?
If the punter is 5 or more yards away from his original punting spot, basically, then there's no longer any possibility of roughing the kicker.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, he at that point is a runner of the football.
Yeah, it's a completely different play at that point.
He is not the punter anymore.
Yeah,
and it's absolutely insane that probably cost Missouri the game.
Yeah, him thinking to still try to punt it though. I mean, that's probably like drilled into punters' heads. Like, if you touch the ball, try to kick it.
Yeah, He got injured too. He got hit really hard. I don't know if he actually was injured, but he was on the ground like rolling around in pain. And
he was making sure there was a flag thrown.
Yes, and there definitely was. And the refs were just standing over his body, just like talking about the ruling of the play. He's like rolling around on the ground.
Yeah, outside of that play, though, I mean, like a couple plays that stand out was Brady Cook fumbling the ball just completely on his own, untouched, loses the ball, turnover. He did make up for it, though, with an incredible run late in the game where he like bounced off 3 tacklers and scored a touchdown. And yeah, the Missouri's defense dominating the line of scrimmage was so fun to see, and it obviously had become a trend at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And then Missouri travels to Tennessee, and we don't really need to say much about that one. It was kind of close at the beginning, and then Tennessee just ran away with it. That was what you talked about earlier, the defense not giving up and just keep bouncing back. That was the only one where...
Yeah, Jalen Hyatt kind of had his way with us.
He did. And the defense was like, you know what? It's not happening.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I don't know what else you want to say about that one. Brady Cook had the most rushing yards in the game with 106.
He had some nice plays.
Yeah.
Like, the offense had their moments in that game, but there's no way they were going to hang with Tennessee, one of the best offenses in college football.
Yeah, and they were sitting pretty. They were like 5th, I think, and only 1 loss. Was that I can't remember if that was before or after they beat Alabama, but they were like they controlled their own destiny, you could say, towards the college football playoff, and then they choked it away.
Well, what's his face got hurt? Hendon Hooker.
That's true. Yeah,
towards ACL.
Yep. Yeah, that will make a difference. Yeah, he was pretty good for them last year.
Yeah, honestly, they maybe had a shot.
Yeah. So Missouri gets absolutely trounced by Tennessee. It hasn't been that long since Missouri has done that to Tennessee, though. So, just for the record, Missouri beats New Mexico State at home. Good game for Brady Cook. 250 yards passing with 3 touchdowns, along with 71 rushing yards. So he showed what he can do against an inferior opponent. And what was the score of that game? Missouri won that game 45-14. So gotta love those non-conference home wins. And that set up the final game of the regular season against Arkansas. And Arkansas is basically only the quarterback. Jefferson was their entire team. Rocket Sanders pretty good too. He made some plays, but KJ Jefferson was basically single-handedly trying to will Arkansas back to a win in this one. And you got to see just a physically powerful quarterback, how much of a difference that makes, because Missouri's defensive line was getting to him.
Yeah.
But he was just, shrugging off tacklers and using his feet to extend plays. He was impressive in that game.
Insane, like, to watch some of the plays that he got out of. Like, some of the tackles he escaped was borderline unbelievable.
Yeah. And Missouri's offense did just enough. The final score was 29-27. Again, though, settling for too many field goals. Mm-hmm. That's as we're sort of learning lessons from last year and starting to think about this coming season. Got to get in the end zone more often. I mean, like, obviously it's good to score touchdowns, but the amount of times last year that a game would have changed, it flipped to a win if we just convert one field goal try into a touchdown. And a lot of times, like, Brady and the offense were able to get chunk plays to just kind of get down the field into the red zone, but then just stall out or take a terrible penalty.
Yeah, it's crazy to think how close we were to a pretty special season, win-loss wise at least, maybe an 8 or 9 win season.
With a victory over the number 1 team in the country.
With how bad the offense was. I mean, the offense was terrible for the majority of the season. Even in a lot of the games they won, it was brutal to watch. And I guess that's encouraging if like you said, just average 1 more touchdown a game, or, just a few of those conversions a few of those field goals being touchdowns, I mean, it just changes the complexion of the entire season. And so I would like to think, I mean, I always would like to think that there's some kind of, we kind of regress and there's less just mind-numbing moments and there's less just unfathomable things that happen. And so they always seem to happen every year because that's what makes college football. But
and it almost evened out, like even just within this season.
Yeah.
Holding on and beating Georgia, that wipes out the weirdness of the Auburn and Kentucky games.
Yeah.
But Missouri, Missouri being as close as they were with Georgia, they did benefit from multiple uncharacteristic turnovers from Georgia's offense, stuff like that. So, that does tend to balance out. But, man, we just couldn't. Being on the wrong side of those, razor-thin margins, just no fun. It drives the fan base crazy. It's got to drive the coaching staff crazy. It makes it just the perfect storm for overreaction.
Yeah, because people don't remember that stuff. Yeah. Like people aren't actually watching the games, and that affects your perception of the entire all sports fans.
Yeah. So if you're listening to SEC preview content and you hear some analyst or somebody's dismissing Missouri because they keep going only 500 and they don't mention these weird outcomes in last year's season, it's okay, this person was not actually paying attention. With the Arkansas game, though, it was fun to see those teams going into that game both needing a win to get bowl eligible. That was pretty fun. Mm-hmm. And ending the season with a win against Arkansas will always,
never gets old.
Yeah, make some of those other problems go away a little bit.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, Missouri played Wake Forest in the Gasparilla Bowl, and
good memory.
A bunch of, I think there were some injuries. Some players had already left the team. That was just, nobody cared about that, including me. Of course, I took it very seriously while I was watching the game. Got way too emotionally invested while I'm watching it. Before and after, I'm like, yeah, of course, nobody cares that we didn't even have the real team there.
Yeah.
But
I was on a family vacation to New York City, and I had COVID watching that game, and I was very miserable in many different ways.
At least you had something to watch while you're,
I suppose,
self-isolating.
Gosh, I was so mad that night.
Yeah, bowl games, though, unless you're in the playoff, it has to be a bowl that is very special to Missouri.
Yeah, or it's got to be some opponent that you want to get up for. Wake Forest is
and we were trying to,
and they were sneaky good too.
Yes,
they had a
course.
bunch of experienced players.
Of course, they have to be that
good
type of
quarterback
team.
And stuff. Yeah, it was we were never winning this game in a bowl game setting.
Yeah, lost that game 27-17. But yeah, who cares? So yeah, last year everybody's talked about it, but only 6 wins. We go 500 again. It's disappointing. But there's reason to be optimistic. We find out in the offseason about Brady Cook's shoulder, and we're like, okay, well, he was playing injured. Maybe that explains a few things. Luther Burden, he's coming back. He's going to be more experienced. Brady Cook's going to be more experienced. We're bringing back almost all of the offensive line and adding new starters to the offensive line. So the entire offseason, other than Dominic Lovett's departure, which of all the position groups to lose a key piece, wide receiver room is the most manageable. Every bit of the offseason kind of, I think, added some optimism to this upcoming season.
Yeah, I think, some of the other teams in the SEC are losing big pieces too. Obviously, I don't think I'm as scared of Kentucky this year with no Chris Rodriguez, no Will Levis. I think their offensive line is still going to struggle.
They do enjoy reloading in the transfer portal. That's like a coin flip every season. I feel like. Yeah.
Yep. Tennessee's losing Hendon Hooker. They have a good quarterback prospect, but
Florida, I think, basically flipped their entire roster this offseason. And of course, Missouri adds an offensive coordinator, which had been every loss that the offense struggled, which was most losses. Mm-hmm. There was always conversation about Drinkwitz calling the plays. Does he need an offensive coordinator? Does he have too much on his plate?
Yeah.
There was, a little bit of ambiguity about what exactly was Coach Hamden doing. He's the quarterback's coach, and it just didn't.
And it felt like the games that maybe there was some Hamden interference, like we were playing better.
Right. There was rumors that like he was calling the plays some of the time.
Involvement, not interference.
Yeah. Well.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that was one of the biggest things in the offseason that kind of restored hope for me in Drinkwitz a little bit was like, okay, I think he realizes he's got too much going on. He's trying to be the CEO. He's trying to manage recruiting. He's trying to manage the team in the locker room. And then, oh, by the way, he's calling all the plays. Like, one man can only do so much. And I think that's the best possible thing for him to get off of his plate.
Yeah.
That someone else can do and improve the team, improve the offense. So I thought that was that was a respectable move in my eyes for him to get those duties off his plate.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that everything I mentioned before, all of that, just it sets us up for a team that's I heard they're returning 18 starters, and
some very wise man somewhere said that.
I've been hearing that all over the place. And I guess, just every little bit of news from the offseason added a little bit of cautious optimism to this upcoming season. And it makes perfect sense why some analysts and some commentators have sort of stuck their neck out there a little bit and been like, I think Missouri is the dark horse in the SEC East, and I'm high on them this year. I think that there's a lot of good reasons to feel that way. Now, we're going to break down the entire season and predict wins and losses later, but the vibe right now for me is cautious optimism, and depending on what some of these other rosters look like and how much returning talent they have.
18 returning starters.
No, I guarantee you none of them have 18 returning starters like the Missouri Tigers.
No.
We could seriously be in for a special season this year.
You can craft the narrative.
Yeah,
for sure.
I'm doing it. I'm gonna
You're crafting
it. Yeah.
All right. You're telling yourself that story. I'm right there with you, man. I think it's taken some time to kind of smooth out some of all the bumps and get the talent, kind of develop, and it just takes time. We've talked about it a lot in football, but bringing in talent is not an immediate return. And I think at this point, you have to start seeing that pay dividends, and I think we will.
Unfortunately, the biggest question mark is the quarterback position, the most important position on the field, and it's I have this sinking feeling that we're not going to have answers as soon as we would like, and I don't know. I feel like I've said it a million times on the show, but that instability at the quarterback position is just a nightmare. Anytime you have a guy who doesn't have, and hopefully the team can just shut all of this stuff out as far as like the fan base reacting from week to week, but I don't want to go through another season of second guessing who's the starting quarterback every single game.
I believe we probably will.
Well,
because there's more than one guy that we know can do it. And no matter what, if things aren't great, that's always going to be in the back of our minds.
And of course, it is always possible that there's more than one guy that equally can't do it, which is scary to think about.
But we don't know that.
Yeah. We do know Brady Cook last year was good enough to, if a couple balls bounced different, he was good enough to lead this team to 8 wins. So we will talk more about Brady Cook. We will talk about Sam Horn and the rest of the offense next week and give our thoughts there and go position group by position group and get even more excited for the upcoming season. We'll talk about Luther Burden quite a bit. If you know and like that guy, you can look forward to that. Kyle, anything else? Are we done here? Okay. Well, let me wake my computer up. I will do a special thank you to our Patreon supporters at the $10 level and above: Britt Treese, Brian Smith, Ryan Demore, Tristan, Ben Smith, Parker, Daddy JD, Tim Keynes, Tyler Harsel, Brandon Garofalo, Brandon Hanks, Matthew Tilley. Thank you.
Thank you so much, gentlemen. You can find this podcast on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. We're on Twitter at Mizzou Sports Pod, and you can email us at MissouriSportsPod@gmail.com.
You can find our t-shirts and stickers on our online shop, MissouriSportsPod.BigCartel.com.
Producer Cameron, can you give me a Luther Burden go?
Sure.
Thank you everyone for listening. We will see you next week.